Okay, so you're looking to get a home in Orlando. How do you cut your housing costs? Or maybe you already own a home and you want to find out, how can I reduce how much I'm paying every single month? Well, in this video, I'm going to dive into this topic and how you can save money every single month when owning or about to own a home in Orlando. You can't miss this. It's everything you should know when it comes to cutting your expenses and when it comes to housing in Orlando. Getting after it now. What's up, everyone? My name is Cameron Hodge. On this channel, I talk about making the move and living in Orlando, Florida. I absolutely love it. I drop videos for you every single week, helping you get an idea of what it's like living in Orlando and how to do it smartly. But also coming at you from eXp Realty, being a licensed real estate agent here in Orlando, is I love helping people make that move and help with those real estate decisions when it comes to making the move to Orlando. It's what we do every single day, and I absolutely love it. This number popping up below is how you can get a hold of me. You can call, text, email. Let's have that conversation to build that plan to help you get here with the least amount of problems possible. So how do you cut your housing costs in Orlando? Obviously, Orlando is not the cheap place it used to be. I think a lot of people are concerned about, how do I cut my housing costs? How do I do it smartly so I'm not just spending my money, wasting it every single month? And I think we all could use some extra money in the bank every single month, and cutting those housing costs are probably the biggest expense that everyone is paying when it comes to Orlando. It's not like it's the middle of nowhere, right? Like, you're still paying higher costs than you would in certain places in the country. Okay, so before we even get into what you should cut your housing costs with when it comes to living in Orlando, if you already own a home or piece of real estate, it really starts before you even get into a home. It sounds cliche, but obviously you want to know your budget. And look, this isn't like most agents are like, well, if you can afford $400, now you know what your budget is. No. That's not what I'm talking about. So the average home right now in Orlando is $360,000, right? And that was in November. I still have to see the numbers for December and what the average home prices are. But you have to figure out, okay, so let's say you can afford $350,000. But that doesn't mean that's what you want to pay everyone. So you really have to sit down. You have to figure out, what do I want to spend on a house every single month? Because you got to start there. I don't care if it's buying a home or renting. You got to figure out what your budget is. And unfortunately, if what you need to get in the bare minimum, whether it's a condo or a home, and you can't even afford the bare minimum, your first step is really you have to figure out how to make more money. And it sounds cliche, it sounds annoying, but it might just have to be living in a different area. Like, I just shot a video on Gainesville, but you have to kind of figure out, can I afford Orlando? And if you can, what am I willing to spend every single month? I just talked to a client actually a couple weeks ago, and they're moving to Orlando. They know they can afford above the average price point, but they don't want to. And that's a respectful decision. And you have to really kind of figure out what that budget is, where you want to spend money on. And it might come to a situation where it's like, well, we can afford a home, but we're not really ready to spend the cost it would be to live in a home. So that's fine. Then when you adjust your plan, like, hey, maybe we're okay living in a condo for 4 years, 5 years, and kind of figuring out, getting into that bigger home, because we don't want a bare minimum home. We want to have the equity built up to get into that bigger home, such and so forth. All that plays into it. The second thing you really want to do when it comes to cutting your housing costs is evaluate your current situation. And I think a lot of times when it comes to, even when people reach out to me about moving to Orlando, a lot of times the conversations go, I always ask this question. It's like, are you sure you want to move? Now, maybe you're already in Florida. Maybe you're already living in Orlando. That happens for sure. But if you're living in another state, you really need to sit down and be like, is this a journey I'm willing to go on? And again, another cliche thing, but it's really important, because you need to look at your situation. You need to weigh in, like, am I really saving money going to Orlando? Or am I moving to Orlando because of a job opportunity? Am I moving to Orlando because I want a better life? Like, I think many of us are, right? Like, or I want more freedom in my life. I want more, like, whatever that thing is. And you have to kind of figure out, like, is that worth giving up what I'm currently doing? Now, this could be as simple as, am I tired of renting? Do I want to buy a home? And Orlando is the place where it's cheaper than where I'm living in New York City, San Diego, LA. You insert expensive city here that's more expensive than Orlando. And, maybe it's a situation where you're already living where you want to live in Orlando, and you're like, mate, do I need that bigger house? And you really need to sit down, like, well, is it because like me, like I have 3 kids now, right? It's like, do I want more space because I have more kids? Do I need to be in a situation to where, am I okay living where I'm at now and kind of dealing with a little bit of pain for a little bit longer because of how the economy's kind of getting a little stressful with the inflation? You really have to evaluate those sorts of things. It's really easy to be like, I want a bigger home. Like you can go to a lender and they can be like, hey, you can afford this price. And you're like, okay, great, I'm going to do it. But you got to sit down and be like, look, rates are where they are and eventually they'll change, right? But home prices are still at where they're at. Like if you're not really needing to do it, like should you do it? And you really got to sit down and kind of figure out, like, do I want to, should I buy a home? What if I'm renting in Orlando and like, I don't know if I want to live here next year. Like I'm actually considering going to a different city. You got to weigh all these options because a lot of times, and it's really okay. Like people reach out to me and we have that conversation kind of like therapy, right? Like it's kind of like real estate therapy. Like I'm not sure if I want to do this. And we kind of have a conversation about like, do we run through like, well, here's some facts. And a lot of times what's funny is like when you have a conversation with someone about this, like it doesn't have to be me, but it could be anyone else. You kind of lay it all out there. Like, well, I'm looking to move to Orlando because of this reason. It's like, okay, great. Have you considered these things? Or even just repeating it back. And like, even after you say certain things, you might realize, oh, wow, maybe I shouldn't buy this bigger house, or maybe I don't want to make the move, or maybe, maybe I am ready to do this next step, but maybe I want to wait until next year. And it's not because I'm waiting for a housing crash or this mystical thing that you don't know if it's going to happen. It could be a solid fact. Like, you know what? Maybe I do want to wait for the next job opportunity to where I can have that boost in income, or maybe a little more flexibility where I can work from home and it doesn't really matter what neighborhood I live in. Any reason could be that, and evaluating your current housing situation is something I don't think enough people do. And like I said, even if you're newer in the process and you're needing someone to talk to about it, reaching out to me to where you can kind of work through that. It's, like I said, it's like real estate therapy, kind of figuring out, does that make sense for you? Should you do it? And just all I do is I can't guide you in terms of like pushing you in a direction, but I can certainly give you facts and numbers to kind of help you in your decision. So you can always reach out to me and we can kind of have that conversation. Text or you can call me. You can schedule a Zoom call down below if you really want to go that far, but it could just be as simple as sending a text message, being like, hey Cameron, like, what do you think about this? And we can work through that. Now, the next step really is kind of exploring alternative housing options. What do I mean by this? Well, alternative housing options could be a lot of things, right? Like some people do qualify for things like Section 8. Maybe you need that help because you can't afford a home right now. But I'm not necessarily talking about that. Alternative housing options could be a lot of things. So before you get into a house, right? Like obviously you might be able to afford a single family home, but maybe you don't want to really be dealt with the full cost of a single family home. Maybe you're looking for a home that has like a granny flat or an ADU attached to the property. Or maybe you're willing to like, hey, can I rent out rooms, right? Like I've certainly seen people and I have clients that are like, they're going to college, they have a job that they can afford a place and maybe they're renting a room out to kind of negate that cost, but they're still getting the benefit of building equity, but they're paying less than they normally would in the mortgage by themselves. Or maybe it's buying a multifamily property, living on one side, renting out the other. Or, it could just be, like I said, it could just be, renting out rooms, or it could be maybe you're buying a home that has a little bit more space. I mean, I've seen lots around Orlando that might have 2 properties on one lot, depending on what price point you're at. And maybe that's okay. And like that's paying less than you normally would. Like there are a lot of options out there. Or maybe it could be like, maybe you live in your home, you're outside an HOA, so you're not really worried about it, and you're renting out a room on Airbnb. It does really well. Orlando has a lot of business professionals that just need like a single room in certain locations because they travel here for business and stuff like that. And like exploring other options. Sure, it might not be perfect, right? Like we all want to buy the mansion. We want to live there with no one living in the home, but kind of exploring those options is a way to kind of negate that. And I have to do it myself as well, right? Like it's just being uncomfortable with the uncomfortable and realizing like, hey, there are alternatives out there to lower my cost every single month. Am I willing to work with them in what could fit my specific situation? So if you don't have any, you don't even know where to start, you can reach out because this is something I love to have conversations about because like, I don't like saying no. I like giving you solutions and really finding solutions. What matters, especially when it comes to getting anything in real estate, renting, buying, it doesn't really matter. Like you want solutions, not no's. Now, the next thing obviously is cutting expenses. Do you need Netflix? Could you do some changes with your cell phone bill? Do you need that big car payment? Do you need a new car? Do you need 2 cars, 3 cars? I don't know what it is, but cutting expenses. Now, I will tell you, as someone who has definitely in the past and even currently like always is very big to cut like my expenses of stuff I don't need. Like you only can do that so much, right? Like there are certain things like I like having internet in my house. I do. I like to eat good food, not necessarily out in restaurants, right? Like that thing that's expensive. A lot of us can cut to save some money every month, but like, like I like to buy regular meat and vegetables for my family. I don't like to live off of cereal, and I'm willing to spend money on that. So there are certain things, obviously, like you only cut your expenses so much. But I think we all have something we probably don't need to pay for every month. Maybe it's that subscription you forgot about, maybe, all that stuff. And the same thing goes to their homes, right? Cut your expenses could be, unnecessary expenses, but a lot of times you have to look like, are you a couple years into your mortgage to where you can get rid of your PMI, your mortgage insurance you had when you bought the home originally? Like, they won't always let you know that you can remove it. Like, you got to make sure you're on top of it. And I've had even situations where I've gotten a home with PMI and they wouldn't, if I didn't reach out, they wouldn't have let me know. They'll let me keep paying it. They don't care. So you have to make sure that you kind of find the fat, cut the fat. And that's obviously one way to get ahead of it. But I'm not going to delve too deep on that, because I think we all know cutting unnecessary expenses, clearly, like, we're all trying to save money, and like, especially how expensive everything is. I mean, even McDonald's is like 5-course meal nowadays. Come on, it's ridiculous. Obviously, assistance programs. So this can go in a lot of different ways. Obviously, when renting, you have Section 8 and things like that. Obviously, if it's a rental situation where maybe you can't buy a home, maybe you're looking for a lease option where you're putting a little bit more money down, you're renting a home, but it's helping you purchase that home, like, several years down the road when your financial situation is a little bit better. Like, that's kind of like not an assistance program, but it's something else. Obviously, there's a lot of loan programs that will help you with down payment assistance. In this current market, we can probably get sellers to kind of cover either a rate buy down or closing costs. So looking for those options and programs can kind of help bridge the gap. There's always programs out there. Don't be the person who's too proud to use programs. I will tell you, like, as someone who is very prideful and making sure I can support my family, provide for my family, and it's very important to me. At the same time, I'm not ignorant to the fact that, like, hey, it's okay to ask a little bit of help for a period of time. And if there's an assistance program, especially if you're like a firefighter, EMT, veteran, teachers, like, there are a lot of programs out there to help you, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just understand that a lot of these programs have a catch. It depends what it's for. Sometimes, sure, like, there is no such thing as free money. Like, something is being given up, whether time or like equity in the home down the road. If you go to sell it, there's always something that you have to give up to get it. And if you, like I said, you can always reach out. We can go into like different programs that are available, but just making sure you kind of understand what's available at the time you go to make that decision. Another step you can do, obviously, so let's say you're a renter, right? Kind of get into this around a little bit, is you can go negotiate with your landlord. Believe it or not all landlords, obviously, if you're in a big apartment complex, yeah, sure. Like, when it comes to big rental companies, being an investor myself, like, yeah, sure. Like, those large management companies could care less. Like, you're just a number to them. Like, they're just trying to get these numbers met and quotas met for their owners. Obviously, if you're like a smaller landlord or maybe a smaller management team, like, believe it or not, a lot of times I've seen like, people, like clients who were like, oh, they won't let me cancel my lease early. Like, hey, our agreement says we're guaranteed this big of a rent increase. Like, if you've been there a while, or maybe you're an awesome tenant, you don't ask for anything crazy, you make their life easier, or whatever it is, like, I try and lean on the side that humans are humans, and having a conversation with them about certain extenuating circumstances are better. I will tell you, as someone who has and will own more rental properties, that having a tenant who pays on time and might reach out and have an issue, it's better to have that conversation to kind of find solutions than kind of being stuck in the hole and not able to make something work. The next thing, obviously, is when it comes to mortgage rates and going to buy a home. Look, I always go with mortgage brokers. They can shop a lot of different places to find the best rates. At the current market, I will tell you, people get really fixated on finding the best lender with the best rate. I say it really comes down to your situation. Like, you want to make sure you find someone. Like, I have my preferred lender for the team, but I always am willing to shop around because it depends on what programs you're trying to use, what kind of loan you're trying to use. And obviously, when it comes to shopping for better rates in the current market, they're going to be higher than you're probably used to in the last couple of years. But like I said before, you can have sellers in this current market buy your rate down. And there's a lot of different tips and tricks to get this rate down lower to help your bottom line every single month. Not going to get too deep into this one. This is like a situation where you really are going to have to reach out. And if you have bad credit, I can help with that too, and things like that. So you have to make sure you reach out and we can work and build that plan for your individual situation. The next things you could do is consider downsizing. Maybe you are living in that home already and it's bigger than you really need. Do the kids leave the home? Are you just, parents who are now empty nesters? Or did you buy a home anticipating having that next kid that you were like, you know what, we decided we're good with 1, 2, 3 kids. We're not going to have that next kid. And maybe you're in a situation where you have some equity and maybe you want to downsize. Like, it's okay to be like, hey, we bought too big and we don't need that. Or maybe you're about to buy a home and you are kind of going big, but you're like, maybe I don't need a huge place to start. And you kind of got to weigh these situations in, right? Like, maybe you get a small home that has a little bit of acreage, and you can build that ADU in back. Like, I know one day I want to have an office, build an ADU in the back, and that's going to be my office. Like, I just prefer that, right? And you have to make sure you understand, like, hey, are you looking to downsize? You're trying to downsize and things like that. But look, there's a lot of ways to cut housing costs. Like, you can get solar on your home. and there's currently tax incentives and things like that to get solar on your property to cut your electric cost? Is it, hey, not running the AC so high? Like, there are a lot of things I think as humans, we understand how we can cut costs. It might not be easy. It might be a tough conversation to have, but we can do that. But like I said, if you're looking for a solution and you're like, hey, I know I either want to get into a home and I need help creating a plan to make sure it best fits my budget, or maybe you're someone who's in a home and you just need help figuring out, hey, how can I cut my costs? I love having these conversations. Like, it's as someone who also has struggled financially in past years, and like I think we all agree how expensive things are now. Getting creative and finding solutions is what we all need more of, and I'm always happy to do that. So this number popping up below, you can either call, text, email, and I also have a Zoom link down below. You can go straight to the point and schedule a Zoom call with me. It'll be me and you talking one-on-one, kind of figuring out your situation, what you're trying to do. You know, I think the biggest thing I've had in this market and helping clients this last year is there's a lot of people that are like struggling financially, but they want to make decisions, whether it's buying real estate or whatever. And I don't shy people away. I'm not going to turn you away. I'm not going to laugh at your situation. Like, honestly, I've probably been there myself. So you can always reach out. We can have that conversation, make it happen, be there to help you along your process, whether it's now or it's 5 years in the future. It really doesn't matter to me. My biggest goal is making sure that you're taken care of and that we hit every step of your goals that you have for your life. So I hope you got value in this video. I hope I gave you some good insights on tips and tricks and just rabbit holes that you can jump down. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.